haven't been recording that whole time. That's sad. I was actually really going somewhere with that. But anyway, so I was talking about, okay, well, I guess I can start in the beginning now. Or pick up where I left off, because I was going into a whole thing. But it's not even what I needed to talk about anyway. So let me just get back on what I was on myself. So these details that seem, I don't want to say they're irrelevant or insignificant, because they're the details of my life. It's the story of my life. So to say that they don't matter or they're irrelevant, I mean, that's not really true. But to say that they're pieces of a puzzle that, you know, they're not, there really is no murder mystery, you know. So I mean, to see them as like a clue, you know, I never did. But at the same time, yeah, on some level, I guess on some level, I have always been seeking to uncover the truth. Because like I said, I guess it's more important for the person in the family that is the scapegoat. I guess it seems a lot more important to that person to understand everything at play than the people that are constantly forcing the blame and the problems and the issues and everything onto one family member. I guess it does make sense that those people would be a little apprehensive to just go seeking out clues, you know. And I said I don't have to give these disclaimers, but I think it's important to, because if I come across as somebody, I don't want to come across as someone that just, I care enough to speak about these things with a level of respect, regardless of the fact that I've never been treated in that same manner. The fact is, everyone in these scenarios was innocent at one point, you know. So I just constantly remind myself, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And it's true. That's why people say all the time, the world. It's so easy to blame the world, which is not true. Granted, we are all in the world. You know, if you say people suck, you kind of should acknowledge the fact that you in fact are one. So to say, well, that's the problem with the world, or that's the problem with traffic, you know, we're by default, you know, it's like we're admitting that we are part of the problem. So if I come across in speaking on these things with any level of animosity, or, you know, I mean, if there's hurt behind it, it's not, I can't guarantee that that's not going to come across to some degree. But for what it's worth, the only reason that I understand to the extent that I do, and the only reason that I'm able to and have forgiven and healed from the things that I have, is because I've made it a point to understand why things are the way they are. And it's very, very important. Hello. Your dad needs to cut your toenails, so you need to go over there and let him. Or I can't take you on walks. If you want me to take you on walks, he's got to clip your toenails. She's not going to let you because she doesn't see you the way she used to see you. Because you don't see you the way you used to see you. Well, I'm not doing it either. That's all I had to say. I was just going to say the facts real quick and then, but I don't want to hear anything else. So, there is a huge difference in understanding something, understanding why something is the way it is, having a certain level of compassion for why something is the way it is, or why a person did something that they did, or why a person is the way they are. There is a huge, huge difference. and gaining that level of compassion or understanding, learning the backstory, getting the full story, the full picture, that is not the same as excusing or justifying. It's just not. I think both. I think one is not required, but it is very, very beneficial, really, to you more than anything else. You could have turned that light off. Do you want me to turn the light off, or do you want to turn it off? Oh, you were doing her nails, huh? You can do her nails. I know you can. You just have to know you can. So, anytime you can get an understanding of something, first of all, it's going to help you. Well, I mean, because you could be wrong. You know, I mean, there's always a chance that you have this, something against a person that maybe is not even what really happened. But if it is, regardless if they're sorry or not, you need to forgive. And it's a lot easier to forgive when you understand why a person did the thing they did. Not to mention the fact that almost every time, if not, actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. Every time, 100% of the time, it had nothing to do with you. Even if it had everything to do with you, it had nothing to do with you. If that makes sense. No matter how personal it felt, no matter how personal it came across, it had everything to do with them. And regardless of what it was or how bad it hurt you, it's important to, number one, understand why they did it, and the fact that it does not in any way, directly or indirectly, it has nothing to do with who you are. It does not affect the person that you are. It doesn't mean you deserved it, and it doesn't mean you are different because of it. You know? You forgive them. You understand. It's easier to forgive also when you realize how easy it could be for you to do it as well. So when we sit up on our high horse and we look down at people and we say, I don't know or care why they did it. I just know I would never do that. So I don't have any sympathy. I don't really care. They did it. It's wrong. I would never do it. And they did it to me, and how dare they? And I did nothing wrong to deserve it. And period. And at the very least, if we do forgive them, we want to make sure that they know that we bestowed our forgiveness on them. That's not, no. You look at them at eye level, because they're no better or worse than you. They've just been in a situation maybe more messed up than you've been in, or just a different type of messed up. Now, granted, sometimes it may even be a situation to where they either want to admit that they did it, or maybe they admit it and they have no regret or remorse whatsoever. You still have to forgive them. You have to. So, understanding why somebody did something and excusing it are not the same. Consequences are in no way contingent upon the reason why. You can forgive them. There's still consequences. And most of the time they're out of your hand anyway. You're not the one that gets to issue out, that makes those decisions. You forgive because the Bible clearly states we forgive others because we are forgiven. God forgives us, so we forgive others. If we don't forgive others, we don't get forgiveness. And if we don't forgive others, it's because we are still on our high horse. And that means that we're going to be in for a very rude awakening when we very shamelessly march up to the gates going, "What up? I'm here. Let me in." Well, actually, no, I don't know you, But also, I don't know you because of this, this, and this, and this. Because every time that you had unforgiveness in your heart, which was most of your life, if not the whole, is for your conscious, that part of it, you never forgave anybody. So I never heard your prayers. They were literally hindered. They were blocked from me. So even when you thought you were talking to me, it was just a dial tone, So anyway, because it's a very extreme example, and because I've been called a monster so many times, literally like publicly ridiculed for being this sick and twisted monster that basically promotes child molestation, like I support, like picket, like we support child rapists, we support, like, because that has to be, because for me, like I said, to extend, because who am I to judge where that understanding and compassion is appropriate and where it's not? Where do you draw that line? Well, that's not my decision to make. If a person does anything, we have to assume that there's a reason why they did it. Whether or not it's a good reason, that's not, but the understanding, it doesn't stop just because it's, the more heinous the act, or the more awful the person, whatever it is that they did, like, I guarantee you the reason behind it, or the story behind it, is going to make it that much more like, oh, it's still not right. It's still not right. I don't know the statistics, and I don't know the like verbatim, like what the study. It's something along the lines of this. There are certain situations, if not most often, when a person is what's the word? Perpetual? Is that the word? Like a repeat offender. When a person is a child a sexual predator, a child molester, that person, the odds of them being rehabilitated are almost non-existent. That means there is almost hardly, if ever, and obviously these are not facts that can be for sure reported. There's no way of knowing for sure, because maybe they just didn't get caught again, But in general, it is my understanding that it's very, very, very unlikely, if not impossible, for a person to be rehabilitated and become, be back in society and not pose a threat to other victims, or, what would be victims. But like I said, somehow we go from, they should have the Mexican cartel beat them literally to a bloody pulp and leave them for dead after sodomizing. You mean, like, I can't even tell you how many awful, awful, awful things I have heard from people, just like these stories, and like what should happen to them, or what they know for a fact because this person knows these people, and and the guards that just, it's sad. It's very sad, because what people don't understand is that when something traumatic happens to a person, their emotional maturity is, their emotional growth is stunted at that point. Their emotional maturity, it's like it just stops, at least in that particular area of their brain or their life or their, it just kind of stops.
Ah, sí.
So the body continues growing, their mind continues growing. They might grow up and be a math wizard, or run a successful company, or be like an architect or something. You might be able to look at them, and by all accounts, they look like an absolute full-blown adult. But when it comes to certain areas in their life, they're a child. They are the emotional maturity level of a child. So I want to paint a few pictures for you, and I want you to really try to see this. I want to paint the picture for you, and I want it to feel like you're there. You have a person that, let's say this child, and I'm going to use a male just because I think it's more prevalent, but it definitely, anyway, we're going to say this little boy, and this boy is 5 years old, and this boy, I won't go into details, but let's say maybe a grown man, either some type of authoritative figure in his life, whether that be a relative, whether it be an uncle, a grandfather, a landlord, a janitor, a teacher, a coach. He's 5, so you know what? It could even be a parent, but someone that is a grown-up has very inappropriate sexual encounters with this child. Okay? So I'm going to go into a few different things. Now, number one, I don't know because I've never had a penis, but it is my understanding that, even though we put emotional, we attach emotions to everything because we're emotional beings, but the fact is we are very carnal in nature. We are very primitive, and we're physical. We're primal beings. If you touch something, if you touch an area of the body that gets aroused, it's gonna get aroused, whether right or wrong. Your penis has no moral code, So let's say at some point in this child's life, whether it be before or after, because I said 5 years old, I said I should have said a little more vague in the details, but whatever, just go with it. At some point in this child's life, he's told, number one, if a man likes a man, they're going to burn in hell, most likely. If this child's ever been to church, especially a Southern Baptist church, he's going to burn in hell. Also, if he had a mother that cared for him and did the things that, typically mothers do, they, tell them things like, if this ever happens to you, this is bad, this is wrong, this is not okay. These are just a few different things to think about. These are just all these little things that could possibly, but most likely in this scenario, probably actually did happen. Now, let's say this grown man that's being inappropriate with this child, let's say it was the dad's brother or best friend that he just thinks the world of. Loves this man, good man, brothers for life. That's confusing, first of all. Or let's say it's somebody let's say it is the uncle. And let's say the uncle is a successful businessman that just bailed mom and dad, who are not as good with managing money, just bailed them out financially and saved their house from going into foreclosure. And if it wasn't for Uncle So-and-so, we'd be homeless. Okay? Now, this is a lot on a child. This is a lot in itself, and I'm not even close to done. Let's say this man who, has some, he's a grown-up, so he, by default, has a certain level of superiority, or, can invoke fear in this child pretty easily. Let's say he says, I have a gun at my house, And if you tell anybody that this happens, I'm going to take that gun and I'm going to kill your mother right in front of you, or maybe your little sister, or maybe your whole family. Or maybe he's not really sick and twisted. Maybe he just says something like this: if you tell them, they'll never believe you. They'll think you're lying. And then do you know what's going to happen to you once I find out that you told them? They're not going to believe you. They're not going to protect you because they're not going to believe you. What do you think is going to happen then? You know? It's horrible to think about, right? Who would think about things like this? Well, when you don't think about them, it makes it that much harder to believe and spot and prevent. It's not fun to talk about. Of course it's not fun to talk about. But how hard would it be for a child to talk about something that they were told you can't talk about? You know? So there's shame on top of shame on top of shame. Then, if that's not enough, they grow up and they want to do the same thing. And that's the thing with shame. That's the cancer. And it's just that its nature is so sinister and so infectious, and it robs a person of everything good. And the thing with shame is, it usually, if not always, was the person's fault at all to begin with. So you're telling me that I lived my whole life living in shame because of what someone else did to me? You're telling me that when I was an innocent child, someone took advantage of my innocence. They preyed on me knowing that I was weak and vulnerable, and they exploited me, not just physically. They exploited me for my innocence. They invoked fear in me. They took my power from me. They forced me to not only trust myself or my reality, but now everyone in my life that even if I just thought they were going to protect me, now I can't trust them. And God forbid I actually speak out on this and they don't believe me, or they side with the person. And then I have to grow up living my life in shame. And then everything that I do that is, even if it's nearly impossible to connect the dots, I promise you, they all stem from this one incident, or these different various incidents. Anything that happened when a person was innocent, before they had reached the age of accountability and did not know better. Anything that happened that caused that person to be self-destructive, to live their life, to hurt other people, hurt themselves, ruin their, just destroy their body, destroy their life, destroy any love that might come into their life, anything good. I mean, basically, they're the physical manifestation of shame within their heart. And I'm sure I don't have to go into this, but just to keep it going, I'll also elaborate on the fact that, this same family that either allowed it to happen, that didn't want to acknowledge it, or was forced to not believe it because they would be homeless, or because, whatever the situation is, because it happens so often. And although there are many different scenarios, there's really, it's really only a few scripts that play out over and over and over and over. And, just because, no one's going to say that the day that somebody says, hey, I've seen this movie, like a bunch. Can we watch something different? I'm really tired of this same script over and over and over. And then somebody else says, yeah, I've seen this one a lot. I literally could recite it word for word. I'm over it. But when everybody sits there ashamed to admit that they watched it, because really they watched it when they were too young to even know that it. No, that's how. This is not coincidence. This is by design. This was all an attempt, and it wasn't an attempt. It was a successful plan of the enemy to perpetuate sin and deeply ingrain it so deeply in our blood and in our hearts and in our minds and in our DNA, and to do it in such a sinister, subtle way that it's swept under the rug, and it just goes on and on and on, and the longer it stays hidden, the more it festers and grows, and the worse it gets. And we are living in a time, if there's ever been a time, this is it. The time to say, no, you can't do that. You can't shame me for something that you did to me. It doesn't work that way. You can't put guilt on me and punish me and exile me and mark me as damaged and throw me out or send me off to the island of misfit kids because of your mistake or your neglect or your shame. You can't do it. So, I'm not going to go, I wanted to go into this more in detail, but it's kind of just one piece of the puzzle, so I'm just going to really go into this one last part of it, and then I'm just going to move on to something else. So the other thing I was going to say was, let's say that, going back to the whole, like, excusing a person versus understanding why they did it, and consequences and compassion are not the same thing. I just think about that child who, at least when it comes to, I guess I would, just for lack of better words, sexual relations with other people, or however you want to look at it, when it comes to that aspect, the fact that he or she was emotionally stunted at that age, and even though they look like a grown person physically, they had the emotional capacity of a 5-year-old, at least in that sense. I just think about all these awful stories that I've heard about people being brutally beaten, if not killed, in jail, that how, there are cartel members who have, no telling how many fentanyl overdoses they've been responsible for, how many, literally people in jail for murder that glorify beating or killing these child molesters. And I get it, but again, this is all the devil, I don't want to give him the credit of saying it's genius. It's sick and twisted, but it's by design. It's not by coincidence. How perfect is that? You have a bunch of literally criminals, like murderers and gang members, and people that kill people's pit bulls and throw them in their front yard and stuff. I mean, again, I'm not stereotyping. I mean, I am stereotyping, but we're talking savages, barbaric human beings, cavemen, that behave like barbaric savages. You have them locked up in a jail cell with absolutely no dignity whatsoever. How convenient is it that they can go beat the hell or murder, definitely defile and sodomize a person with the emotional capacity of a 5-year-old who was never told that what happened to them was wrong. No one ever even let them know that they mattered enough to even care or ask what happened to them or anything like that. Regardless of any of those things, I just picture that 5-year-old trapped inside a grown man's body, and these men that were guilty of heinous crimes feeling so noble, proud of what they just did to that man. And the guards, who most likely got into that field because probably they either weren't physically fit enough or really just for whatever reason couldn't even make the cut to be a measly cop. So they work as a guard at a correctional facility, and they get to bully some, these same men and feel good about themselves, They just, and now they feel perfectly fine with their whole situation because what more noble act is there than to rid the world of one more sick pedophile, But the only thing that can almost compare to the sick son of a bitch that's laying in a pile of his blood, in the shower, is the me that defends them. Right? I mean, that's what, like I said, that's what I've been told so many times. What is wrong with you? You are a whole different type of sick. You better hope you never come across somebody that, what if that was your daughter? What if that was my daughter? Well, it probably will be. Actually, if you really want to go there, let's go there. What would I do if faced with the person that ever did that to my daughter? Well, I won't know anything about it because the story that I was telling as it relates to my personal life, I was saying that because nobody ever talks about these things, because nobody would ever admit that I probably come from two different different bloodlines of sexual molestation and incest on both sides, running rampant all through the bloodline. Big shocker. Nobody ever talked about it, right? But my mom, who either has never admitted to herself or, whatever. I mean, she's never admitted to me, for sure. On some level, my mom felt the need to protect my sister from someone. And again, this is all very, very circumstantial. This is all very, what's the word? This is very much just I have nothing to base this on. No evidence whatsoever to base this on. But I can promise you, despite how sick and twisted I've been accused of being, I can promise you that I could find something better to do with my time than create bullshit scenarios that probably or definitely did not ever happen that involve incest on either side of my family. I promise you that is not one of my favorite pastimes. Well, I know this never happened. I know there's no way that this is in any way factual, but maybe I'll write a fiction book about all my family being a bunch of pedophiles and incest rapists and, narcissists and, succubus, and that'd be a bestseller, I bet, huh? I know I definitely have the support and the backing of my family, right? So I say that to say that, despite being accused on multiple occasions of being one of the most sick and twisted individuals in the entire world, I promise you that I'm actually pretty down to earth, and I'm actually, I like to think about things a little more easily digestible than that. So the fact that these things, not only just evidence and facts and, intuition and all this stuff just kind of weighs in on me, comes in here and there, bits and pieces throughout my life. And then also you have things like, like a therapist hypnotizing me and painting a picture of somebody, my dad, in this, hypnosis state, of molesting me my whole childhood. Like little things like that, minor stuff, if you will. But the fact is, I don't think that anyone thinks about things like that for no reason. And I don't think that God tells me to take a shower, which is very, very symbolic, first of all. So God is, he really is a huge proponent of symbolism. You know, there's a lot of things that we do in this physical, natural world that are very much a reflection or symbolic of things that first happen in the spiritual world, in the spiritual realm. So it should come as no surprise to you when I say that God has me take a shower every day. And that just so happens to be first thing in the day while I'm cleansing myself. He speaks to me and reveals these things to me. And I don't want to hear them. What I was saying earlier about my dad's side of the family, I was saying that, you know, I don't know how, I mean, yeah, it actually makes perfect sense now that I was exiled from both sides of the family and the entire town for speaking so nonchalantly about these things, going, what happened to this family? Was it like one specific incident, or was it just like a whole plethora of just, you know, like, what was it? Because it was something. I'm not asking, was it something? Because obviously it was, even as a child. I'm just like, duh. And everybody, what is it, this kid, what is she, you know? But I did. I said that. And I wasn't being mean, because you got to understand, like, someone tipped me off to this idea in the first place. So if in any way you have this picture of me just running around just going, y'all are messed up, what's wrong with everybody, you know, I mean, no, because I was a child, and not only was I an innocent child at one point, but even as an adult, I'm really just not a hateful, inconsiderate asshole. I mean, I'm just really not. Now, and I'm saying these things because these are things that I'm told all the time. The contrary, like, I'm told all the time how awful I am. But what I'm saying, though, is that it's probably more so a scenario where I've been around adults who probably had, first of all, had no business speaking about the things they were in front of me in the first place. But after doing so, me thinking that I could chime in an adult conversation because I had been invited into one, said, hey, what happened here? You know? You guys are talking about, like, this and this. I mean, he jumped off a bridge? Like, threatened to wipe out the whole black community? Like, was arrested for terrorism? Like, what? That's our family. Okay, so what went wrong? I mean, I feel like that's a valid question. Now, I mean, granted, like, I'm in this family, so, I mean, like, no judgment, you know? But obviously, we can all say that something is a little off kilter here, right? So I guess I probably had the target on my back from a nerd. But, you know, it's like, it's not okay just to tell people that everything's okay when it's not okay. And that was part of my childhood too, is like, everything's fine, even though you know it's not. We all pretend like it's fine. That's a very uncomfortable place to be as a child, and that turns into a grown-up as well. But I guess it all goes back to the whole, like, just don't allow this stuff to perpetuate, you know? Like, I don't know why our only two options are freely talk about these things that are only side effects or, like, the aftermath of whatever we don't speak about. Why is speaking about these things openly in front of children and being appalled when they weigh in on it like they're an adult, or not speaking on it at all and acting like everything is okay, and even going so far as to saying, you're so lucky that you're not like those people, because see how they do this and this and this? We don't do that. So consider yourself lucky, you know? I feel like the third option is the one that's always overlooked, and that's the one where we just go, hey, there's a problem. There's a really big problem here, guys. Can we all agree on that, or no? And I'm not even saying it's anybody's fault in particular. I'm not saying it's not all of our fault. I don't really care. More than blaming or anything like that, can we just acknowledge first and foremost the problem, and then can we work on a solution? But it won't it never happens. It never happens. You know? So my dad has 3 other brothers, and those 3 brothers died within, I want to say, a year and a half, maybe 2 years tops. A very, very short time frame. And not old at all. My uncle that died of cancer was the oldest, and he passed away first. And he was in his 60s. And he had cancer. And then, and I'm not exaggerating by much, I mean, they practically left the funeral, my dad and his brother, his other brother, on their motorcycles. I mean, and it really, when I'm telling you, like, because this uncle lived out of state. So he was literally in town for the funeral. And the days after, dies in a motorcycle wreck. And like I said, I mean, it wasn't, but very, very shortly. I mean, I'd say a year and a half tops before the youngest brother passed away as well. Of an enlarged heart, go figure. The one that was my heart, you know. And I always joked about how his daughter's name was Sunny, and I couldn't understand why she got the name Sunny and she was such a bitch, and I got the name Lindsay, which is not like a bitchy name, but it's not Sunny. And I'm Sunny, you know, and she's not. And I don't want to get too far off track, but I don't know that I'll ever get the chance to apologize to her in any more capacity than this. And I don't even know if, I don't really see that happening either. But, and maybe I don't even have anything to apologize for necessarily. I do though. Because, you know, she did what almost no one does. And that was just stay the hell out of it. She realized that as things continued in the downward spiral that you can imagine that they would, given the tiny bit of the much larger scale clusterfuck that was my upbringing in my life as a whole, and the families that were intermingled in that, you know. She saw a situation, and even though that I really believe she genuinely cared, because I do believe she did, there came a point when not only was she facing, I was very closely stepping on the toes of her unhealed trauma. Or even healed. But when is anything ever really healed, you know? The parts of her childhood and the things in her life that she had gone through and been hurt by. There came a time when I was facing things that were too closely related or looked too much like those same wounds that she was still suffering from or still healing from, or at the very least they were scars, you know. So not only did she, even if it was on a subconscious, on some level she knew that that's something that really muddies the water, and it's not gonna, it does not help the situation in any way, you know, but it's really just a recipe for even more disaster. And not just that, but I think she realized just on the very fundamental level that there was nothing she could do. And although she couldn't stop me from setting everything that I encountered on fire, including myself and anyone that got close enough in reach, she knew she couldn't stop that from happening. And on some level, I really think that she knew what was going to happen. I do. Because it would be foolish for me to think that these intuitive or even prophetic abilities that I've always had to know these things that I can't possibly know, or to sense or predict things, or just have this understanding of things that I have no business understanding. I mean, I can't really believe that it would just be limited to me, especially if I'm the blackest sheep in the family, you know. Well, I mean, like, that's a reach to think, you know what I mean? Like, so anyway, I don't see, and like, this is when I'm like shutting down and stuff, so I'm not going to. I'm going to take a break in a minute, but I want to get through this in the event that she actually does listen to it, because I know that she cared. I know that she did. But see, the people that kept trying to help, first of all, they kept trying to help. And they kept trying to fix a problem that they caused in the first place. And they kept thinking that if they could just fix the problem that was me, it would make the secret stay a secret. If they could just fix me, they could make me go away. It would make the secrets go back away where they were, because everything had been tucked away so nicely for so long, until I came along. And I just couldn't get on board, I guess. Maybe the secrets that I was supposed to bear were worse. Maybe I was weak. Maybe I wasn't weak. Maybe not being weak made them on some level realize how weak they in fact were. Maybe they really did love me, and maybe the fact that they knew the truth, maybe it hurt them so bad. And maybe it reminded them of all the things they didn't want to remember, about all the times that they had been hurt. And I'm saying maybe, but it was all of those things. Of course it was all of those things. Maybe it was the fact that on some level my mom feared whatever. And like I said, I'm speaking very vaguely because I have no idea. I have no idea. But I know that on some level my mother wanted to protect my sister from whoever or whatever she did, because she left town until my sister was a teenager. But she came back. She came back, you know? And then she got pregnant. When her and my dad got married, she got pregnant. I want to say she did things right this time. I don't know. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Either way, before me, she was of child. She was with child. And maybe being back in that town and maybe carrying another child, maybe even though she moved back, and maybe she had convinced herself that everything was okay, but maybe that she had a moment of thinking, oh my God, what if it's not okay? What if this happens again? And what if the fear of that stressed her out to the point that she actually miscarried? Is that a crazy hypothetical scenario that's just too far out there? I don't think it is. She never told me about it, but that's not just something that people just, oh, by the way, like, how was your day? I had a miscarriage before you were born, you know? I'm not like mad that she didn't tell me that. I'm not even offended that my dad cried when he found out I was me and not a boy, that they were going to name Michael, coincidentally, which is not a coincidence at all. I just think it's cool because Archangel Michael was like the coolest. And I say was, he still is the coolest. And he's a warrior and he's a protector. How cool is that, you know? So I'm going to take a break for a minute, because, and this is the crazy thing, this is the first time that it's not been difficult to even try to talk about these things. But just to tell you a little bit about who I am, even now, with the can of worms open, knowing that I'm not being fueled by anger or hurt or righteous anger, or any type of emotion, or there's no external factor that's motivating this besides God just laying it on my heart and saying that time is running out. That there was a time when exposing people for things would have been for the wrong reason, and it would have been out of hurt, and it would have been even more dangerous and wrong, and it wasn't the right time, and I'm glad that I didn't. But there's also going to come a time when it won't matter, because it'll be too late, and hearts will be so calloused, and lives will be so non-existent. I mean, time is running out. And I was kind of making a joke about it earlier, but Danny and I really were talking, like, I feel like today, I feel like the time has drug by, like, it's just been insane to me. I'm like, there were times that I wondered if, like, the clock, because I mean, I have a clock right here that's like a, like it's a whatever clock, so I mean, it takes batteries. So there was a time when I really was like, is this bitch dead? Because, like, time is not moving at all. And again, these are all kind of far-fetched scenarios, and I'm just tossing them around. It doesn't matter. There's no attachment to these things. I'm not like, no, I swear this is what it is. So, like, you have to believe me. Like, time stopped today. Like, trust me, it did. I can prove it. Like, no, I'm not saying that. The reason that people are so confused and appalled, and they think that these scenarios that I come up with are so far-fetched, is because they don't know God the way I know God. Because the fact is, it's not crazy when you remember that God, He is the creator of time. He controls time just like He controls everything else. It's a construct of His whatever. It's something that He gave us because we're such silly little beings that we need things that are linear, like time and, all these things, because our understanding, our capacity for understanding is so minuscule compared to His that it's almost probably funny to Him. So for me to say time slowed down today to the point that I really thought maybe it had stopped, it's not that I live in this far out there world where I'm like, oh, maybe the government, oh, maybe it's a conspiracy. They broke in our houses and changed all our... No, it's not that at all. It's that the longer I operate in the realm of the Holy Spirit, the longer I strive with everything in me to align my thoughts to God's and know His heart and Him know mine. Well, He does know mine, but to know His and to have a deep relationship with Him that is built upon understanding His thoughts and His ways and making my ways more like His, The more I do that, the more I laugh about it, because I think, why would He not? I mean, He's a man of His word, no doubt. If He says something is going to be, it's going to be. But just like the dad at the slumber party who's going, don't make me come up there. If y'all don't keep it down, I'm going to come up there. He's going to come up there if you don't keep it down. Of course. He just really doesn't want to. Because that was a bad analogy, or that was a bad metaphor. Because this is not God coming down here to tell us to keep it down. This is Him coming down here to set everything straight. And it doesn't look good. I've read the book. I know the way it ends. It ends better for some than others. And He knows that too. And there are things that have to play out the way He said they would play out, because His word is His word. And it is, and it was, and it is to come, and it's never going to come back void. And if it says it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But there are some things that are open to, or that are subject to change as far as you and I and our salvation and which side of the fence we're on and when we go and how we go and where we go. And I feel like I can say with confidence that He wants you to be on his side. And I do too. Because I know that the people that are living with the shame of everything that they've done, and not to backtrack, but just a quick reminder, the whole point of this originally was to, or one of the points was, the things that we're the most shameful of are the things that were never our fault to begin with. The origin of all of it, I mean, even going back to the garden, it was never truly our shame to carry in the first place. That's why Jesus died on the cross for it. That's why he did that. You understand that, right? People don't sacrifice their lives for guilty people, typically, right? I mean, you don't hear a lot of stories about people that laid their life down, literally gave their life for a murderer, you know? Now, some people would lay down their life for a righteous person or that type of situation, but regardless, he knew, first of all, that even if we were totally 100% responsible and at fault for everything in our life, even then, we didn't know any better, you know? But the fact that what I've taken, what does that even say? 57 minutes, I guess, whatever. 57 minutes and 57 hours and 57 months thinking about these things and analyzing and picking apart and praying and, you know, looking at from different perspectives and researching and all of that, you know, that I've done. There's a lot of other things at play here. There's a reason all this happened for a bunch of silly little humans. So if we can't even get past the fact that our shame was not even ours to carry in the first place, that the things that we hate ourselves the most for were the things that were done to us and not by us, and the things that make us feel unworthy and unloved and unworthy of love, and the things that make us hate ourselves and despise ourselves and seek out wrong treatment and perpetuate the things that bring us shame and just do them more and the pile the shame on more and more and more, which makes us hate ourselves more. All of that. The fact that that was never how it was supposed to be. That's so backwards. That's so wrong. You should have been loved more because of that. You should have had people running to you, just pouring love and affection onto you and just doing everything that they could possibly do to console you and heal you and nurture you and protect you and love you even more because of what happened to you. So the fact that we live in a world where the more innocent you may have been and the more awful you may have been treated, the worse the outcome could have been, the worse your life could be, the more people could have went out of their way to make sure that you never, ever spoke about these things or gave light on in any way to these things, because, you know, that's how shame works. That's how sin works. You know, to grow up believing that you deserved that, or that something's wrong of you because that, or it's so sad. And it's so deeply ingrained in us that even if somebody does stand up for themselves and say, no, I did nothing wrong. I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that at all. That should not have happened to me. This is not how that works. You can't punish me for someone else taking advantage of me. No. What happens then is you have an infinite number of people who, almost all of whom, have either experienced something that or something similar to what it is that you've decided you aren't going to carry the burden of anymore because it was never yours to carry to begin with. You have to understand people are going to respond one of a few ways. Number one, they might respond like this. If you keep saying that, it's going to jog a memory in my brain that I had no choice but to force down as deep as I could, because I knew it wasn't safe to remember or feel those things. So if it wasn't safe then, it can't be safe now. And if you keep saying that, whether I can help it or not, you're going to jog open something in my memory. You're going to rattle something loose. You're going to stir and wake something up that I'm afraid of. So that can be a problem. Or it could be the resentment or the just, you don't get to do that because I didn't get to do that. You have to be quiet because I had to be quiet. You know? It's so many things. It's like, it's just so many things. I'm going to take a break. This is good though. This is good. When I come back, I need to finish out the cousin thing, because it's just very important that I do. Because I said a lot of bad things about her. And if I'm going to continue basing this conversation with myself off of things that I have no way of knowing or proving, that I'm just going off of sheer intuition, I don't think she said a lot of mean things about me. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, hey, I just admitted that I've said some pretty awful things out of hurt, but it doesn't matter. I said them. And I really don't think she said bad things about me. I think that she just had a genuine frustration and helplessness that came from seeing a problem and knowing that it was what it was, and knowing that there was nothing she could do to stop the train wreck from happening. And if she got any closer, she was probably going to be part of the wreckage, you know? And in hindsight, she hurt me a lot less than the people that carried on the way they did for as long as they did. And in some ways continue to.